All right, today we're taking a trip into the fog-shrouded streets of one of H.P. Lovecraft's most fascinating creations, the old seaport of Kingsport. And what's so interesting is that this is a town that really seems to live a double life. On one hand, it's this quiet colonial town, but on the other, it's a place of absolutely unspeakable cosmic horror. I mean, listen to that. This description from the festival just paints an incredible picture, doesn't it? It's so haunting, so ancient, and, well, it's weirdly beautiful. You can practically feel the cold air and just see those crooked streets twisting away into the dusk. It really does feel like a place pulled right out of a half-forgotten dream. You know, Lovecraft himself said the town's layout was like a child's disordered blocks. But is that all it is? Is it just a picturesque jumble of old houses? Or is that chaos actually hiding something much, much older and a whole lot stranger? Well, that's the big mystery we're going to unpack right now. Okay, so let's dive into this thing. For anyone who's read Lovecraft, Kingsport is a real puzzle, because the town doesn't just have one identity, it has two, and they are completely, almost unnervingly different from each other. So on one hand, you've got the Kingsport from the story The Terrible Old Man, and in that story, it's just a classic New England seaport. A little gossipy, sure, but basically normal, apart from one really strange old guy. But then bam, just 3 years later, in the festival, Kingsport is transformed. It becomes this ancient, haunted place where these masked figures are doing rituals that open up gateways to underground worlds of horror. So what gives? What on earth happened in those 3 years? Well, here's the twist. The answer isn't hidden away in some dusty old copy of the Necronomicon. Nope. It's out there in the real world, in a real town that H.P. Lovecraft fell deeply, almost obsessively, in love with. And this is where the fiction of Kingsport gets planted firmly in fact. And there you have it, straight from the man himself. Lovecraft just hands us the key. His fictional, fabulous Kingsport is his dream version of a very real place, Marblehead, Massachusetts, a historic coastal town just a little north of Boston. And believe me, this was not just some passing fancy. Lovecraft was completely captivated by this town. For him, the only place better was his own beloved hometown of Providence. He ended up visiting at least 20 times. He saw it as this perfectly preserved piece of the past, and he just poured all of that passion right into his stories. Now, this right here is what I find so cool, because it lays out the transformation so clearly. Look at this. In 1920, before he ever went to Marblehead, Kingsport was just a name, a dot on the map. But then he visits in December 1922 and everything changes. Less than a year later, he writes The Festival. And suddenly Kingsport has a real geography, a deep history, that unforgettable atmosphere. And it's all lifted directly from his antique dream of Marblehead. So let's actually do it. Let's take a little virtual tour and see just how deep this connection really goes. We're going to put some of Lovecraft's most vivid descriptions of his fictional town right up against the real places in Marblehead that sparked them. Let's start with this absolutely chilling image from the festival. I mean, it is pure Gothic horror, right? Describing the town's main graveyard. It's just a powerful, unforgettable, and deeply unsettling image. And here is the smoking gun. This brilliantly illustrates the direct link. This is from a letter Lovecraft wrote right after his first visit. The wording is almost identical. He saw Old Burial Hill in the snow. That image got burned into his brain, and he just transplanted it, nearly word for word, straight into his story. Amazing. And the parallels here are just uncanny. In Kingsport, the highest point is a graveyard on a hill. In Marblehead, the highest point is Old Burial Hill, a graveyard. The fictional one is where they had these ancient, ghoulish rituals. The real one, that's where the town's first church stood, its own kind of ancient ritual center. It's a perfect one-to-one match. Okay, let's move on to another key landmark, the church on Central Hill. He mentions it in a bunch of stories, often with this really beautiful, dreamlike quality. But here's the thing. Unlike the graveyard, this one's a little more complicated to pin down. So it seems like the church in Kingsport is actually a composite, a mashup. The little detail about it being torn down to build a hospital, that actually mirrors the real history of one of Marblehead's churches. But the idea of caves underneath it or its exact location, he seems to be pulling from other parts of the town. He wasn't just copying one building. He was taking bits and pieces of Marblehead's history to create something new. And that is the crucial point here.
Kingsport is not just Marblehead with a different name slapped on it. It's an artistic creation, a blend of real stuff and imagined stuff. It's a true amalgam. Now, some of the early researchers, like a pioneer in this field named Philip Schreffler, they tried to create a perfect one-to-one map. They'd read about Green Lane in a story and then try to find a real street in Marblehead to match it. They even tried to find the terrible old man's house, even though Lovecraft wrote that story before he'd ever even been to the town.
Right. And as the scholar Donovan Lux points out here, that super literal approach kind of misses the point. Lovecraft was an artist, you know? He wasn't a cartographer. He wasn't trying to create a secret puzzle for us to solve with a map. He was just trying to capture a feeling, an atmosphere. Going to the trouble of creating a secret code for street names, it was just unnecessary. A much better way to think about it is like this. Lovecraft used Marblehead as the base layer. You know, the steep hills, the harbor, that ancient vibe. Then, on top of that, he sprinkled in his own imagined details, like fake street names. He borrowed architectural ideas from other towns he loved, like nearby Salem. And then he mixed in ideas that were already rattling around in his head. What you get is something totally new, inspired by reality, but never, ever a slave to it. So why does any of this matter? Why are we so fascinated by this connection between a real town and a fictional nightmare? Well, I think it gets to the very heart of where horror really comes from. Here's the big takeaway. It's that the most otherworldly, the most terrifying, the most fantastic places, they often have their roots in something intensely familiar. Lovecraft looked at a beautiful historic New England town, and he saw more than just its charm. He saw its shadows, he felt its ancient secrets, and he saw the potential for horror lurking just under the cobblestones. It's a great reminder that beauty and horror are often two sides of the exact same coin. Which really just leaves us with one final, kind of thought-provoking question, doesn't it? If Lovecraft could find Kingsport hiding inside of Marblehead, what strange wonders and forgotten histories are waiting to be found in the places we all walk past every single day? What secrets are hiding in plain sight?